The kingdom of Duralon was at peace. Years had passed since the curse was broken, and life had transformed beyond anything Sahna could have imagined in her days of solitude. She, the silent girl once ridiculed by villagers, was now a queen. The vineyards she once tended barefoot were now part of royal gardens stretching far beyond the hills. Prince Ninel stood by her side, no longer bound by enchantment, his bronze skin and warm eyes a reminder of the man she had saved. Together they raised their son, Amir, the Prince of Light. He carried the quiet strength of his mother and the fire of his father's gaze. To the villagers, he was a miracle, a symbol of hope, and in the palace halls, he was adored by all. Days turned into years of laughter and music, and for a time it seemed as if sorrow had been banished forever. But peace has always been fragile. One night, the air grew heavy in a way no storm had ever made it. The skies darkened, although the moon should have shone bright. Thunder rumbled, but no rain came. Guards patrolling the walls felt a strange chill, as if invisible fingers brushed against their skin. In the quietest hour of night, a whisper drifted through the palace corridors, faint at first, then sharper, echoing in places where no voice should be. Far beyond the valley, hidden in a cavern where light could not reach, the sorceress stirred. Her eyes glowed with fury. Once she had cursed Ninel to live as a beast, believing he would remain humiliated forever. And yet, a silent girl with no power, no soldiers, and no crown had undone it all. It was an insult she could not forgive.
"She ruined me," the sorceress spat, her voice echoing through the hollow cave. "A girl with nothing, she broke my curse. But her silence will not save her now. This time I will take everything from her." That night, she created something darker than before. Not a beast of claw or fang, but a shadow. It had no shape, no voice, only despair. It crept down the valley and over the palace walls. The soldiers saw nothing, yet felt their hearts grow heavier. In children's rooms, the shadow stole dreams, leaving little ones screaming in terror. In the fields, vines withered, fruit blackened, and the earth cracked dry. Elders grew weak, unable to rise from their beds. The kingdom awoke in panic. Prince Nail, furious, called upon his soldiers, "Arm yourselves, defend the people." But their blades struck only empty air. The shadow could not be harmed, for it was not flesh. Spears passed through it like mist. Every strike was useless. The enemy was not one they could fight. Fear spread like fire. The villagers who had once mocked Sahna now whispered her name again, but this time with hope. Some remembered an old prophecy. The king will fight with his sword, but only the queen can face the shadow. For silence defeats what screams cannot. The words carried across the palace until they reached Sahna herself. She stood still as the meaning sank into her heart. She remembered her own life, the years of loneliness, the whispers behind her back, the nights she only spoke to vines in the wind. All her life she had carried silence like a burden, and yet that silence had saved her. It had given her strength when the world had turned away. Perhaps it was true. Perhaps silence itself was the weapon she was meant to wield. That evening, she sat beside Amir's bed. The boy slept peacefully, his chest rising and falling in soft rhythm. Sahna brushed the hair from his forehead, her heart aching with the weight of what she must do. "My little light, if I am not here tomorrow, remember this. Silence is not weakness. It is the greatest strength." Nail entered, his face marked with worry. Sahna, don't do this. Let me fight. Let me protect you. She turned to him, her eyes steady. You cannot fight what has no body, Nail. This battle isn't yours. It is mine. For a long moment he said nothing, then pulled her into his arms, his voice breaking. You saved me once. Now you will save us all. But promise me, come back. She kissed Amir's forehead, then placed his tiny hand into Nail's. Take care of him, and if I don't return, teach him what I taught you. Silence is never empty. Alone, Sahna stepped out into the night. The shadow twisted above the vineyards, thick and restless like black smoke. Whispers slithered into her ears, cruel and mocking. You are nothing, you always were, an orphan girl talking to plants. They made you queen, but you are weak, weaker than anyone here. Sahna did not answer. She stepped barefoot onto the soil, her gown brushing against the earth, her eyes closing as she remembered. She remembered her parents' faces before fever took them. She remembered the loneliness of her hut, the laughter of villagers who thought her strange. She remembered Bolo, the monkey who had watched her in silence, who had become the prince she loved. Her silence had always been her strength. She opened her heart and gave it to the shadow. All her pain, her grief, her memories, her fears, she offered them freely, as if feeding a vine. The shadow lunged, eager to consume, but the more it devoured, the weaker it grew. For silence was not emptiness, it was weight, it was power, it was truth. The shadow cracked, the whispers faltered, and then, with a scream that tore through the valley, it shattered into nothing. Far away, the sorceress staggered. The bond between her and the shadow broke. Pain surged through her veins as her own magic turned against her. She shrieked, vanishing into the void, but before she disappeared, her voice carried on the wind, chilling all who heard it. This is not the end. I will return, and when I do, the boy will be mine. At dawn, the kingdom awoke to light. The vineyards bloomed again, fruit shining with color. Children laughed as they played. The sick rose from their beds. Hope returned. Sahna, exhausted but alive, returned to the palace. She fell into Nail's arms, and he held her tightly. You did it. You saved us. When the people gathered in the courtyard, they bowed to her, not because she wore a crown, but because she had faced darkness with nothing but silence. The villagers who once mocked her now wept at her feet. The king fights with his sword, but the queen saves with her heart. Her legend spread beyond the valley. No longer the strange, silent girl, she became known as the Queen of Silence, the woman who had shattered despair itself. Years later, Amir grew stronger. He had his father's courage and his mother's calm. One night, he asked, "Mother, were you afraid that night?" Sahna smiled softly, brushing his cheek. "Yes, my son, but courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to walk into it anyway." The kingdom thrived once more, the vineyards richer than ever, the people united in love for their queen. Yet, in quiet corners of the world, whispers still lingered. For the sorceress had promised to return, and her last vow was carved in the silence itself. One day, the darkness would come again, but now Sahna knew she was not alone. She had her husband, her son, her people, and above all, she had silence. And in silence, she had found her greatest power.